Abigail Spencer, you co-starred in Rectify for 4 seasons as Amantha Holden, who fights to exonerate her brother Daniel of murder that sent him to death row for pretty much half his life. And that series concluded last fall. So was it hard to say goodbye to this character after 4 seasons?
I don't know if I'd say goodbye yet. You know, I mean, there's a process for grieving a character that you've lived with and is part of your soul, you know, and I think Amantha has become so much a part of me in that show and Rectify and our cast and our crew. I mean, it really was a special experience, and I'm so grateful to have played her. But yes, I don't think I've said goodbye yet. I mean, it was, you know, and also with streaming now too, people are still discovering it, so it feels so prescient at the same time, you know.
How much do you still think about, where the show ended beyond that? Like, what would Amantha be doing? Where would she go from here? Did things work out with this guy or with this job, or do you still kind of are living in?
I mean, you know, I haven't thought about it in a while, but it's so interesting. I really hope that Amantha in her afterlife kind of, you know, I think about her going on helping other people go through what she's gone through and get people who are wrongly convicted off of death row. I mean, especially with what's going on in our country right now. I mean, it's a really, it's a point of contention. It's a big subject. It's, you know, in Arkansas and Georgia, it's coming up right now. And so, yeah, I could see her, and listening to Serial and listening to some of these other, you know, cases that are kind of similar in tone to the one around Daniel on Rectify. I imagine her life, like, that's what I hope for her. I hope that she uses her special skills and her lawyering, because she really was basically a lawyer without having the education, that she could go on and support and help other people do what she did for her brother. And I guess in my heart of hearts, it's like, I hope that her and John find their way back to each other at some point. You know, that was tough. I get why Amantha had to do what she had to do. You know, she had to make peace with Polly, you know, and she had to kind of go back home. And I don't know, you know, I think I think it could go either way. She could stay in that town and really kind of get complete with that. But I do see her kind of going on and off again. So yes, do I think about it? Yes, I do.
What was the very last scene you got to shoot as Amantha?
Oh my gosh, it was so interesting. It was it was with Jay and with Luke Kirby, the actress who plays my mother. She plays Janet, and with John Stern. And it's the scene where we're sitting in kind of the, you know, there's the living room and then there's the nice living room. And we were kind of sitting in the nicer living room where you keep company. And it's the scene where John basically comes to tell us that there might be another chance that Daniel might be completely exonerated at some point, that there's hope. And so it was just crazy for that to be the last scene that I was shooting of the season, because the first scene that I shot of the season was going to pick up Daniel from the prison after he had been there for 19 years. You know, it was the very first scene that we shot of the entire series was him coming out and being a free man for the first time in his suit and coming out and seeing us for the first time. And then, so that was the first scene I shot. And then the last one, you know, after all this time, to know that Amantha's work was not, maybe in some form or fashion, not in vain. Because I think that was the struggle for her of how to let go, how to truly let go of Daniel, let go of Result, because I think she felt so, when he came back and they offer him a plea bargain and he agrees to do it, but it means that he will forever, and their name, I mean, they're the only two Holdens left, you know, that their name would be tarnished, you know, and she wanted to clear his name. So to know that that could still be in process and that Amantha got to this lighter place, that was really, and it was so sweet. Like Aiden and the whole cast came and said goodbye, and Aiden dressed up in like a cowboy outfit, like, because he was playing the Nashville part of the show in the last season, so he had his Nashville duds on and came with a cowboy hat and a vest, and my son was there and he had flowers for me. It was, I couldn't believe it. You know, it was very emotional.
And did the cast and crew have a chance to celebrate in an extensive way after that last scene? Say cut, go out drinking or something, and just have a.
We were really, if there was anything we were good at, it was doing that all along. But what's nice is after we wrapped, we had a moment here in Los Angeles. We came for the TCAs and they flew everybody in, and we all went out to dinner. And it was interesting because Klain had moved on and started shooting Lethal Weapon. I had started shooting this show that I've been doing called Timeless. And it was so weird because we were all in different places, but we got to come back and have like a moment. There'll be many moments. We all became very close. We were away in Griffin, Georgia, just it was like a theater troupe, like doing regional theater, and it just happened to be that cameras caught it. We were the only people there, the only production there. We basically for the most part had the same crew every year, and just became very close to Ray McKinnon, our creator, Marshall Persinger, our executive producer, Melissa Bernstein, Mark Johnson, who'd been with us from the beginning. It was definitely a little family.
In the finale, you also have this important scene which incorporates the title of the show. Nothing can rectify what happened, and she seems to be coming to terms with not being able to change the past at last. What were your thoughts reading that scene when you first read it?
I about fell over. I was like, I get the name of the show. I was like, Amantha. And then it was like, oh, of course, because she was the one fighting for what her truth was, her idea of what rectify means. To rectify, to take something that is broken and to fix it, to make something new, to resurrect. It's like there's all different ways that you can look at what rectify means, to make something right. And I think Amantha she was the one. She was like, this is wrong, and we have to make this right. And so when I thought about it in hindsight, I was like, oh, it really is has been Amantha's plight, and how beautiful that she's the one that said nothing can rectify this. Like it wasn't. We rectified it. It was not. It was the opposite. And I think I just thought it was so beautifully placed. It's just slipped in there. It's not made. We don't make a meal of it. We're not like, oh, we're saying the title. And it was just a beautiful place to get her to. Now, what was also interesting about that day, is in the last episode of season 4, it opens on a flashback to before we even started season 1. So earlier that day, Jay and I go back to even before, like a moment that we had never even explored. And so it was within the same day. In the morning, I'm playing old Amantha, bullish, hasn't let go, she's just all nerves and smoking, it was like old Amantha. And then later that afternoon, we call her new Amantha, and we did talk about it in terms like that. Ray always said, well, old Amantha would do this, but where's new Amantha, and I love that. I love being able to think about it like that. And it felt really different. It felt different in my body. When we were playing that flashback, I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't felt this since season 1, probably season 2, really between season 2 and 3 is where Amantha really starts to shift. So, and then really it was fun to play Amantha in season 4. She was just smoking pot and, and like working at Thrifty Town and, trying to stay out of trouble, just kind of like, no, it's and really gets a lot of peace. I think that's what, when I think about the show, I think it really is everyone just trying to find some modicum of peace and whatever that way is for them. And it really looked different for everybody.
Now, the central mystery of the show was, the murder that Daniel was convicted of. He's freed from prison, but that he's not necessarily exonerated at that moment. There are still questions. His memory is hazy. And at the end of the show, that question is still kind of left open for interpretation. So what did you think about where the show left that kind of story off in terms of the amount, how it resolved that story, and in ways that it didn't exactly kind of resolve that story.
You know, I thought it was very Rectify. You know, like I felt like it was hopeful, but didn't close anything off. It also didn't answer in a real, you know, it gave us enough so I didn't feel like I was walking away feeling hopeless. You know, I actually thought it was a much more hopeful ending than I was expecting, because I just felt like I never know. Like I just never know with Rectify, because I feel like, you know, someone could crack a smile and then get run over by a car. You know, it just that was the level of stakes to me about the show, but they were all emotional stakes. You know, like when I say get run over by a car, probably not literally, but emotionally in the next beat, you know, you're up and then you're down. And that's what I thought Ray does so beautifully about his writing, because that's life, you know. You know, the thing that I was so surprised by, I was just, I can't even quantify it with words. There was just something that was just so emotional about it. Like it really pulled me in a deeper way. There was a cleansing to it, you know. There was a grieving. I felt like, oh, now I can finally breathe. And I also felt like, oh, I think everyone's could be okay, you know. And I hadn't felt that all the time with the show, you know. And to see where Daniel gone, you know, from being beaten to a pulp at the end of season 1, to be walking through a field and have a hope of love and maybe an actual life. I mean, what else is there? So I just thought it was like a beautifully subtle, very Rectify way to move us into the next chapter, because it really does feel so literary. You know, I definitely feel like all the characters were so full and so rich that I think about them. You know, I wonder how he's doing. You know, and that's Ray McKinnon. You know, that's really him. So that probably didn't answer the question at all. Just like,
oh no, absolutely did.
Yes.
Yeah, Amantha was she was always so unwavering in defense of Daniel, you know, and even she seemed even more sure of his innocence than Daniel was, because, you know, of his memory that night. You know, how much do you think she was really certain, and how much do you think she was kind of fighting back any doubts that she might have actually been having?
I feel like that doubt really crept in season 3. I felt like that was when he you know, agreed to that plea deal. I think that really messed with her, and I think that she actually, part of her healing was allowing doubt in, to even ponder that, because I actually think that she hadn't at all, you know. And I think that she, because of her lawyerly sensibility and because she knew the case so well, it's very interesting. I find that Rectify is like the emotional compadre to something like Serial, where Serial is really not about the emotion. It's really about the case, or the making of a murderer. It's really like the case. And Rectify isn't, I mean, we get some glimpses of the case, but it's really about what it does to the human being and the memory, and how would we ever even know the truth, you know? It contemplates more, I think, the spiritual and the metaphysical part of this, you know, cataclysmic event. So I think part of Amantha, you know, that I think that she just knew the case so well that part of her was like, I know this didn't happen. You know, I can see it on the page in black. If the case was mistreated, the cops, this person, the senator, I think that she was so analytical. So I think her analytical and her emotional sides were saying, I know, I have not only doubt, I think she felt like she knew for a fact. But I think that was interesting to introduce her doubting it and doubting Daniel, and really being like, you know, that was huge. That was part of season 3, was her doubting and letting go. And what if, you know, and it not being her problem anymore.
Did you have Yeah. Did you have opinions of your own about Daniel's guilt or innocence, separate and apart from what Amantha may have thought?
No. Like, it was so hard. I'm like, well, he's innocent. Like, clearly. No. But it was funny because Ray would take polls on set. He would be like, do you think he did it? And some people were like, yes. And or something, you know, it's kind of a running joke because at the end of the day, that's not what the show is about. It's not if he did or didn't do it. You know, again, it's the emotional journey, and would we ever truly know? But I think we do leave feeling like we know that he didn't do it. You know, like something comes to light, and John Stern's going to keep working on the case, and the town's going to reopen it, and enough, enough, hard evidence is kind of coming in for everybody. But what I love is everybody makes mistakes. You know, the sheriff thinks he's right about something, and then he's not. You know, and but no, I couldn't separate. I couldn't separate from Amantha, and I think because I had all that information and I had been living with her for so long, it had totally infiltrated any Abigail thoughts about it. I didn't know how to separate them.
Oh yeah, we learned a lot about Daniel, his the years he spent on death row. You know, we get a lot of flashbacks to that over the course of the series, but we don't see as much firsthand of how Amantha and the rest of the family spent those 20 years. Did you have a detailed backstory in your mind, to draw from for motivation to kind of create that, those layers of history and subtext that aren't always spoken?
Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time dreaming and ruminating about what that might be, and just being available to instincts. Obviously, we had Ray there to provide what he thought. And we did spend a lot of time thinking about what her life was like in Atlanta and who she was there, and then who she was when she came back to Poly. And I was so excited. I went on a little day trip to Atlanta, and I saw all the girls there wearing boots up to their knees and summer flowy dresses and like little leather jackets. And I was like, we did it, like that was that Amantha lived in Atlanta. She's not an Atlanta girl, but she lived there, and thought about what her life was like, getting a job, not going to college, and quitting. She quit college and working in a little desk job just to be near the prison where Daniel was. We get one flashback in season 2. Near the end of season 2, we see her, and there's a scene with Daniel and Amantha when she comes to visit him. And she wrote him letters, and she just held him up. It was like her arms, I mean, her arms must have been so tired. I was surprised that I was like, oh, maybe because emotionally she's like holding him up, but just that imagery of just holding someone up. I mean, her arm, I always imagine her arms just being so tired. And then when she didn't feel like it, we spent a lot of time ruminating from 12 to 32, which is where we pick up with her. And what that was like, we'd know that their father suddenly died of a heart attack. The relationship, because what's so interesting about Rectify, it's not even what people are saying to each other. It's what they're not saying. It's the history between the characters, so every scene had to be so full with that, but you're not even talking about it, so that was delightful. It was delightful. And what was so lovely about being in Griffin, Georgia, where we shot it, is we had a lot of time and space to kind of think and dream, and not a lot of distraction. And I found that to be extraordinarily helpful to the tone of the show. Because it really is. It's the moments between the breaths, between the seconds. And I think we all learned a lot, and really all the actors were just so grateful, if it never happens again, to have that opportunity.
Amantha really was a lot of the strength behind the story, a lot of the driving force behind it. Just keeping everyone moving, keeping everyone motivated. And you have, of course, Daniel is very quiet and internal, and left to his own devices, he might shrink to a corner for the rest of his life. Sometimes it seems like. What was it like playing that conflict and that contrast of dynamics in your scenes with Aiden Young?
Maddening, emotional, wonderful, you know, rich. Aiden, you know, Aiden, I don't know, we just have a special thing. It's really interesting. We'd never rehearsed. We'd never run our lines. We didn't want to mess with it because the moment we met each other, we were like, this is it. And much like Daniel and Amantha, Aiden and I, we fight and then we're laughing, you know, we disagree a lot and we love each other so much. And that's what Daniel and Amantha have. So this was kind of interesting. Our first weekend that we met, we decided to drive to Atlanta, which is about an hour drive from Griffin, to go on a trip to Whole Foods. And Aiden had been living in Australia for the past, like, whatever, many, many years, and had just made a movie in Bangkok. So taking Daniel to a Whole Foods in Atlanta was like Amantha taking Daniel to anywhere for the first time. He was just like, like, you know, and I'm like, come on, like, we're going shopping. And he was like, what is the water? Like, what's this water? You know, like, just like, whoa, you know, it was hysterical. I was like, oh my gosh, we are doing it. We are really doing it. But what was great is to have, you want your characters with the deepest opposing needs to have scenes together, because that's where a lot of the interesting work comes out of. And what I love too is I felt like the scenes, especially at the beginning and by the end with Amantha and Daniel, it was, you saw Amantha be a 12-year-old again, you know. Daniel was her hero. And I think Amantha is Daniel's hero, you know, at the end of the day, I think. But you see kind of people who just want so much, and then they have to go like this to come back together. And it was a nice mirror of their last scene together. There's a phone call that's just very familiar. And yeah, it was delightful. Aiden is one of the most wonderful, greatest actors of our time, truly. And so deep and so opinionated, and then so, like, free and delightful. I mean, really just made me better and uncomfortable too. Like, there's a lot of letting the discomfort through. And yeah, it was like, I don't know, like doing a scene. It's like just sitting outside and a nice breeze blowing by. That's what it always felt like.
The show always had passionate support from critics, and interestingly, one of the earliest moments of awards recognition for the show was when you were nominated for a Critics' Choice Award for Best Supporting Actress, the first season. Do you remember a lot about that experience and what that meant to you and the show at the time?
Well, yes, and yes. You know, I've been a working actor for a long time, very, very fortunately, and really, I'd worked for 10 years before I was on Mad Men. I'd done the leads of network pilot after network pilot, and none of them got picked up. And I was like, I'm going to go where I'm wanted. And luckily, very fortunately for me, it was the rise of cable television. And so I got to be a part of this wonderful season 3 of Mad Men, and get to know Matt Weiner, who I love. I mean, every job I get, it's honestly because of Matt Weiner. If he hadn't cast me in that part, who knows, you know? It's where Ray McKinnon saw me for the first time. And every job I've gotten since in the past, I don't know, 7 years has been somehow related to Mad Men. So I did, you know, I started to understand a little bit more about, you know, who was watching these shows and kind of be more of the zeitgeist and be a part of this kind of storytelling. But what I had not experienced was how particularly the critics can keep you on the air. You know, I mean, the critics kept Rectify on the air single-handedly. You know, if it wasn't for all of you, Rectify wouldn't have made it past season 1. We just wouldn't have, because Sundance was, you know, luckily for us, wasn't concerned and wasn't a very large network. So they wanted it to be important, and they wanted to love it, and they wanted people to be touched and be moved by it. And when, you know, all of you guys did that, that's when we were able to keep doing it. And I think that's what I really experienced was just how grateful. I was just, oh my gosh, because this is what I love to do, and this is like my heart song, and then these people are all responsible for me to keep doing it. And so that's what I just remember was just gratitude, and I loved Amantha so much. And we are a smaller show, and so the fact that Rectify got any recognition, and this character that I was just so deeply in love with, that other people responded to her, was delightful, and just a platform to get more eyeballs on it, because it absolutely did. You know, people are just like, I was somewhere the other day and this person stopped me. I mean, and they had tears in their eyes. I mean, like the responses that I get are so precious to me. Like, there's not a lot of talking involved, but someone who watches the show and connects to Amantha, they stop me and we just kind of look at each other and nod. I'm like, I know. You know, we just have this mutual nodding, and then they share with me that they feel like they've become champions for the show. And so it feels like the spirit of Amantha moves people to just tell people about it. I'm like, that's what Amantha would do, you know? So kind of super rambling, but it's just it has been a delight top to bottom. And I'm just so grateful. And you know, I think also is what has helped me continue to transition out of it and can continue to work, hopefully, you know, knock on wood, because yeah.
Well, congratulations on those 4 seasons of Rectify, and you know, getting to tell that full, complete story. And now it's still alive, you know, streaming, and I will continue to recommend it to anyone who will listen, as I always do.
I mean, I can't thank you enough, and I'm so, Netflix has been so good to us and picked up, you know, all 4 seasons, and just so grateful. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for talking with me today, and have a great day.
Okay. Bye.